I just thought I'll give you a brief background about our next speaker and topic, which is really when we planned this whole event, we thought we would like to expose all of you to some of the stars that are in India. And one of them is a company called Infosys, which followed the IT story, and actually we believe that Infosys made India's IT story a global one. And I'll leave Aditya to talk about that in more detail. So we thought Infosys was a great topic, and they have a great delivery system as well for delivering their services across the globe. And that we thought was also relevant to the IDN network. About Aditya heads the global branding function at Infosys. He actually started his career in creative. So there again, a strong relevance to the creative forum that we have here. During the course of his work, he actually won a lot of awards. He worked with agencies like Lintas, Ambience, Ogilvy. He won over 50 awards for his work in print, radio, and TV. He created two of India's longest running TV commercials, one which ran for 8 years and one another for 11 years without any changes. He then switched to the other side of the table and he went and joined a company called Talisma and helped build and conceptualize a eCRM product which Aditya launched in the US. After that, the itch to be an entrepreneur got to Aditya and he started his own organization focusing on instruction, architecture, and the education space, trying to create a model that maximizes the learning of an average student, even without the presence of teachers. The model worked, but the business failed, according to Aditya. He's written 2 TV series and contributes as a columnist to some of the leading publications in India, and has been a visiting faculty member and speaker at various institutions across the globe, including MIT Sloan, Wharton, Johnson School of Business at Cornell, and Tepper School of Business at CMU. To his great surprise, Aditya says he's also a chemical engineer from the IIT in India. The IIT, as you all know, is a leading technology institute. So without much ado now, I'll just ask Aditya to talk and give us some more information about Infosys.
Thank you, Brian. Can you hear me at the back?
Yes.
I've been involved with Directions, your host, from the day it began. Vivek Basur was a very, very close and dear friend of mine. I was the first copywriter for Directions. This one was for Vivek. Thank you. It's amazingly inefficient. It's so inefficient, it's funny. I mean, look at this room. This is an example of one of the networks global cooperation networks. However, why should all of you, I mean, there's so many functions that are duplicated or 35-duplicated for across all the agencies. Why don't you have shared functions? I mean, forget nations. You look at an advertising agency, functions are replicated in every city. Ogilvy, London, Ogilvy, Paris, Ogilvy, Munich, Ogilvy, Moscow, Ogilvy, Delhi, Ogilvy, Bombay. Each one has its own studio, has its own everything. How can you run like that? What makes you think that the copywriter has to be in that branch? Why can't the copywriter who's working on an account in Munich be sitting in Tokyo? And the whole thing of not understanding the culture, not understanding the society also, it holds some water but not that much. It's amazingly inefficient. What makes you think that the consumer cannot be co-opted in creative. How much do you use? I mean, this room uses data much more than traditional advertising agencies. But how much of the net is being used in analytics? How much of data is being used to guide intuition? TV and print ads revenues are going south. Digital is going up. How much is there a job function in traditional agencies which is based on analytics? The creative director is still the king. It's very inefficient. We would run it very differently.
The answer is clear, Phil. Any more questions? Okay. Any more questions? I have a question to the audience. Knowing you started ever as creatives in our industry, who is in the daily business at the creative department from you? Well, I only can say there is still hope for you. And the hope is that you ever will be a brilliant presenter and speaker as you are. We are deeply impressed and thank you very much for your knowledge and sharing our knowledge.
You know, the year was 1981. Ronald Reagan had just become the president of the United States. IBM had just launched the PC. Microsoft was still an unlisted company. Charles and Diana had got married. That was the year in which 7 professionals got together in this flat on the top floor, pooled in $250 between themselves, and said, let's start a company. That company was called Infosys. 1981 was a very, very, very strange time to start a business in India. India was a closed socialist economy. If you wanted to get a telephone connection, it took you 3 years if you were on the fast track. And if you were an entrepreneur, you were not on the fast track. If you were a teacher in a government school, you were on the fast track. If you wanted, heavens forbid, to travel abroad and to get some foreign exchange, you would be looked at with suspicion. Why are you going abroad? What are you smuggling? It was in those circumstances that Infosys began. And the first few years were extremely tough. By about 1986, we were 50 people. And in this group, you can see all the founders of Infosys. There were 7 founders. The wives of the founders had to pawn their jewelry to meet the payroll. Times were that tough. And then came 1991. 1991 is a watershed year for India. It's the year in which we reached the end of the socialist road. We were about to default on our loan repayment to the IMF. The country's gold reserves were mortgaged. We had to go, not metaphorically, but literally, with a begging bowl to the rest of the world to ask for money. The finance minister of India was made to wait for 10 hours outside the prime minister of Japan's office because he had gone begging, asking Japan to bail us out. We had no choice. We did a complete U-turn. The person who is the Prime Minister of India today, he was brought in as the Finance Minister, equivalent of Treasury Secretary or Chancellor of the Exchequer. He was a career bureaucrat. He was the governor of the Reserve Bank of India. And he was given an open hand to reform the economy. And then what we call in India the liberalization of the Indian economy began. Essentially what 1991 did was it reduced the friction to business. Custom duties were slashed. Before 1991, the average custom duties, if you wanted to import something, let me just show you the previous slide. You see that those two boxes, it took us 3 years to import those boxes. Those are computers. The custom duty was 360%. It was brought down in 1991 to 55% on an average, with a commitment to bring it to ASEAN levels of 18%. It is in the 33% range. Tax structures were rationalized. The peak income tax in India was, take a guess, Peter, take a guess, 97%. It was a sin to make money. Brought down in 1991 to about 40%, today they are at 33%, 30 plus surcharge rates. Capital markets were opened up. Before 1991, if you wanted to do an IPO, the initial public offering of your company, you wanted to take your company public, you did not have the right to decide the pricing of your IPO. There was a bureaucrat called CCI, controller of capital issues, who decided what should be the price of your offering. Today, the National Stock Exchange has a T+2 settlement. NASDAQ has a T+3 settlement. And apart from all of this, export-oriented units were given a lot of incentives, tax breaks, and especially for the IT companies, communication facilities were set up. In 1991, the revenue of Infosys was $2 million. That's it. And let me just show you what happened after 1991. 1993, Infosys went public. Our revenue in 1993 was $5 million, and we raised $6 million by going public. And we put all the money into this piece of land out here and built a building and a campus. These are the 6 of the 7 founders. $1991, $2 million. 1999, $121 million. 2004, $1 billion. 2008, $4 billion. What happened? There are a couple of things. Even before 1991, there were certain things in India that were to prove, as a great foundation for the growth of the country. Number one, democracy. We are the only poor democracy in the world. We don't intend to remain that. We don't intend to remain poor. But against all odds, India maintained its democracy and all the components of the democracy. It has a loud and a fiercely independent press. It has a judiciary that is fiercely independent as well. It has all those institutions that make a democracy, and then that proved to be very helpful when the liberalization of the economy happened. Second, we created a network of heavy engineering infrastructure in India. We said we will make our own planes, we'll make our own steel, we'll make our own tanks, we'll make everything ourselves. So in the process, we had a network of heavy engineering industries. And a corollary of that was we had to create a network of engineering colleges to feed into those industries. And that turned out to be a huge strength for the country and for Infosys. And finally, we had the English language. For over 200 years, we were the colony of the British. And that helped us with the English language. But more importantly, somewhere around 1970 or so, it got into the minds of every parent that if my child does not speak English, he or she won't be able to get a job. So almost every school that came up in the private sector after 1970 was what we call English medium. Because there are 22 official languages in India. English being just one of them. But since 1970 or the early 70s, almost every single school in the private sector came up in the English medium. So these things helped us a lot. Then of course the economic liberalization happened, the entrepreneurship in India was unleashed, and there were other things happening outside India. The Y2K problem. All of you remember the Y2K problem? The world was supposed to come to an end. The Y2K problem was tailor-made for India. India did not have the problem because India did not have computers. The West had the problem, but the West did not have the people to fix the problem. The problem was very simple to fix. The problem was that to save processing power, the coders had put the year in 2 digits. So 1964 was 64. Instead of 4 digits, which was 1964. And when the year 2000 came, it would be reset to 00, and the computers would think it's 1900. That was the problem. So the solution was equally simple. You go through the billions of lines of codes, find the date stamp, and turn it from 2 digits to 4 digits. That's all. But there were 2 problems. One was there were trillions of lines of codes, and second problem was there was a deadline to meet. You could not solve this problem in 2003, right? So India had the people, and the Y2K problem gave us an entry into the top corporations of the world. The second thing that happened was, through the 90s, technology-driven productivity was recognized and embraced by companies. It saw the rise of companies like SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, and millions of other technology companies. And therefore, it was good for Infosys. And finally, the telecom boom. All of you are familiar with something called Moore's Law? Gordon Moore was the founder, one of the founders of Intel. And he said that the processing power of a chip will double every 18 months for the same price. Or the same power will be available at half the price every 18 months. That's called the Moore's Law. And that's why you find the laptops getting cheaper or becoming more powerful for the same price. However, telecom has beaten Moore's Law. The bandwidth in telecom doubles every 11 months for the same price. And that's how we have come from those 56 kbps dial-up modems to these broadbands in your house, which allows you to see movies on your computer. And what that meant was, just like in the 20th century, container shipping changed manufacturing. Container shipping became cheap, reliable, and fast. You put a container in a ship in Taiwan, you know it will reach Los Angeles by this date, and it's not going to be very expensive. When that happened, manufacturing moved out of the Western world. When the shipping of data became cheap, reliable, and fast, all work related to data started moving out. And much of it started coming to India, and Infosys was a beneficiary. One more thing happened. Through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and mostly through 90s as well, India lost all its brightest minds to the rest of the world. They left India, went to Europe or US, mostly US, and worked there. We call it the brain drain. We screamed and shouted. We wrote editorials. We said, stop it. They let them pay a fine because the government is subsidizing their education. And the government was subsidizing their education. When I did my engineering, I paid a fees that was equivalent of $1 per month. And that included my tuition fees as well as my room rent. $1 per month. The cost to the government was $2,000 a year. The balance, $1,988, was subsidized by the government. And then if I went abroad, obviously the government had a right to feel upset. Thankfully, we didn't do anything about it, because we realized that these were our hottest exports. We had not exported anything except our brains. And when the technology revolution happened in the West, companies like Cisco, Oracle, Microsoft, Texas Instruments, Intel, they all realized that their top performers, a lot of their top performers were Indians. And they said, hey, if these guys are so good, there are many more in the base country. So let's go there. So the Indian diaspora had a huge role to play. But when you look back, we still ask that question. What happened? What happened between 1991 and today? And what we have done is we said 4 mega forces have happened. The first is the rise of emerging economies. China, India, Brazil, Mexico, Russia, Eastern Europe. Today, irrespective of the industry you are in, if you want to grow, you have to come to the emerging economies. You want to sell more credit cards, you have to come to these countries. You want to sell more cars, you have to come to these countries. You have to sell more diapers, you have to come to these countries, because this is where the babies are being born, who can afford now. You want to sell airtime, cell phones, you have to come to these countries. Which means that the center of gravity of your market is changing. And that is going to have a huge impact on any organization, how it structures, runs, and organizes its own business. The second mega force is a demographic shift. It's tectonic. The West has aged. The median age of America right now is around 39.6 years. The median age of India is, take a guess, 25. At the same time, America produces 60,000 engineers a year. India produces 400,000 engineers a year. China produces 600,000. This is a drastic redistribution of the global talent pool. 20 years ago, if you wanted to hire someone, if Procter & Gamble wanted to hire someone, it looked into the US engineering, MBA colleges. Today, Procter & Gamble cannot afford to do that. It has to look across the world. Citibank cannot afford to do that. Cisco cannot afford to do that. No company in the world can, Nokia can't afford to do that. Samsung can't afford to do that. This global redistribution of the talent pool again has a huge impact on how companies structure and run themselves. So the center of gravity of the market has shifted, the center of gravity of the employees have shifted. Third, I saw a TV for the first time in my life when I went to an engineering college. Before I was 18, I had not seen a TV. We were that poor a country. We didn't realize it while we were growing up, but we were poor. Today, of course, there are hundreds of channels available on the TV. Till 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, technology was the right of the rich countries. But today, if you take the humble mobile phone as a technology platform, and this is a technology platform today. Take a guess, how many mobile phones are sold every month in India? Let me give a reference. In the US, the number is 1.85 million mobile phones a month. US is a rich country, $30,000 per capita income. India's per capita income is $1,000. So if the US sells 1.85 million mobile phones a month, how much does India sell? Take a guess. Anyone?
5 million.
5?
10.
9 million. Last month, 9 million. A month before that was 8 million. 9 million mobile phones a month. India has more mobile phones than the US. As I said, India has more people, no doubt about it. But and more talkative people. But India is a poor country and it sells 9 million mobile phones a month. India has 300 million plus base of mobile phones. And it's not just mobile phones, it's computers, whether desktops or laptops, internet connections, TV, all the technology platforms. The absolute numbers are becoming, even in developing countries, technology has started reaching the middle class, which was not true earlier. What this means is, A, it enables the talent pool. See, the talent pool is globally distributed and technology enabled, it changes the way it works. Location is no longer important. The second thing it does is it disrupts almost every business. I mean, communication business is a prime example. Advertising business is a prime example. Martin Sorrell is still to figure out whether Google is a competitor or a friend. Is Google a media house or is Google an ad agency? And Google is just one example. There are hundreds of companies. I don't remember who was it that said, eventually all advertising will become direct and all direct will become digital. Right, so agencies that have not figured out technology are going to be in a big, spot of water. And finally, there has been a huge increase in the regulations in every industry. Sarbanes-Oxley Act, Basel II, HIPAA. It doesn't matter which industry you are in. If you're in automobile, you've got regulations on emissions. And it changes with geography. USA has a different regulation, Europe has different regulation, India has different regulation, China has different regulation. Now what it does is, of course, it is a cry from the society for increased accountability from corporates. No doubt about that. But at the same time, regulations level the playing field. And these are the four forces we believe that helped Infosys. How did Infosys harness these forces? So the first one, and this was absolutely critical, we created what we call the global delivery model. Traditionally, our work, the work we do, IT services, was delivered exactly like your business, in front of the client. How many of you service clients that are physically located more than 100 miles from you? Anyone? That's the way the business was. We had to service our clients standing in front, in the same room or in the same building. But we said, that's not really the way to do this. How does it matter to the client where we sit as long as we deliver the work? In the beginning, what we did was, you did not have internet and broadband and email and all those nice things. We had the fax machine and we had the courier. And we had magnetic tapes. So we would put code and all that stuff on magnetic tapes, courier it, we would fax stuff back to India, and people in India would work on it and do the same thing. It took a lot more time then. but the genesis of the model was created. At that time, 90% of our people were sitting in front of the client, 10% were in the back end. Today, 30% sit in front end, 70% is back end. And the back end is not necessarily in India. It is in China, it is in Czech Republic, it is in Poland, it is in Mexico. We believe globalization is about creating where the talent supply is best, about selling where the clients are willing to give the most money, without compromising on quality. So if you can create the best quality in the world in a geography that is thousands of miles away from the client, do that. But have a front end that manages the client. In the beginning, what this one did, what it meant to the clients was things got done for a much lesser cost. What costs $100 in the US, we could do it for $25 out of India. Now, that was a compelling value proposition. I mean, finally, however much you say about it, if I can really give you good quality at 1/4 the cost, you're going to look at that offer. You will test us out, and you figure it that the quality is pretty good, then you are going to go for the $25 instead of the $100. But, what will you do? You won't trust us to do the right thing. So you will tell us what to do. Yeah, these guys can do it, but I have to tell them what to do. And therefore, in the first part, we became excellent, probably the best in the world at taking orders. We could execute on a well-defined task like nobody's business. But we needed the clients to tell us. We did not understand how the banking industry worked because there was no banking industry in India. How would we know how banks worked? So the clients, the bankers had to tell us that this is how it works, this is what you need to design, these are the specs, go and now code it. So we would go and code it. It's like, the creative directors telling you, and we were the studio who were making, the storyboard. It was like that. But not bad. We went from 2 million to 121 million doing that. There was a business out there. But then we started figuring it out because we were hiring some of the best talent in the country, some of the smartest guys, and it didn't take long for us to figure it out. And that's when we started building our capabilities, in which we started understanding how businesses work and what the clients require. And then, of course, over the last 8 years, maybe 7 years, we are the consultants to the clients. So we moved from being the studio to being McKinsey. Our unaided recall is higher than McKinsey's in our client base. We work with about 200 of the Fortune 500 clients. Not necessarily in Europe, where I think most of you come from, but in the US it's definitely higher. Then we realized that this is not only about delivering code. It's not only about the technology part. This globalization has to embed every single part of Infosys. This is true. When a person in Infosys flies from New York to, let's say, Chicago, the ticketing is done in Bangalore. And why should it be done anywhere else? And for that matter, why should your company's ticketing be done in your own country? I mean, you find a travel agent in India. And let me tell you that if I'm sitting in New York and I try to book a Bangalore, New York return fare, it's about 30% more expensive on the same sector than if I look for it from India. So I don't understand why any one of you should have a travel agent at least I mean, when you experiment with globalization, big and small, let your travel bookings be the pilot. Why should you have your travel agent in the same city? How does it matter? Microsoft does not have its help desk in Seattle anymore or in Redmond anymore. Dell does not have it. Levi's does not make a single pair of jeans in US anymore. So why should you book your tickets from your city? And this is just a start. We believe everything can be what we call GDMized. GDM stands for the Global Delivery Model. Everything can be GDMized with a little bit of front end, a huge amount of back end somewhere else, and the technology enabling the transaction. The second part in globalization for us has been the talent. We want to be the magnet for the best global talent. Last year, 1.5 million people applied for a job with Infosys. We hired 15,000. That's the 1 in 100. Now, the thing about the knowledge economy and the globalized knowledge economy is that you don't care where the talent is. Boston, Beijing, Bangalore, Estonia, Lithuania, Kazakh, it doesn't matter. Talent is talent. Location is redundant. It's absolutely redundant for us. We have designed ourselves like the internet. There have been global companies since time immemorial. IBM and Coca-Cola have been around since the time of Christ. So, across thousands of countries. But if you look at Coca-Cola, for example, take Coca-Cola Poland and Coca-Cola Philippines. What's the connection between them? The geographical boundary and the financial boundary are the same. They exist to serve the local market. Coca-Cola Poland has nothing to do with Coca-Cola Philippines. But if you look at Infosys, Infosys Poland and Infosys Philippines are the nodes of the Infosys network. In Infosys Philippines, we don't have any client in Philippines, by the way. But in Infosys Philippines, your work gets done for clients from Korea, from China, from Japan. In Infosys Poland, work gets done for clients in Mexico, in Germany, in France, and they work together. So geography is redundant when it comes to talent. You want the best global talent, and it doesn't matter where he or she was born or lives. The thing is that when you have such an organization that does not have a single center of gravity, how do you hold that organization together? There is no one single center of gravity of Infosys. The markets are spread. The shareholder base is spread. We are listed in India. We are listed on NASDAQ. We are one of the NASDAQ 100 index companies. We have an offering without listing in Japan. 40% of Infosys is held by foreign institutional investors. It's a global shareholder base. Our employees are spread. We have employees of 66 different nationalities. So, how do you hold such a company together? And we realize that the only glue is a set of shared values. Universal values. And this line, this saying, articulates the value system of Infosys. The softest pillow is a clear conscience. We get very little time to sleep. For the few hours that we do get to sleep, we don't want anyone knocking at the door, pointing a finger at us and saying, you cheated me. You did not deliver on the promise you made to me. We want to sleep the sleep of the just. When we began, the founders had come together to ask a very simple question. What is it that we are going to chase? In those days, thankfully, the fad of vision statement, mission statement and all had not come in. So we did not have complicated statements. It was a very simple question. What is it that we are going to chase? Are we going to chase revenues, profits, market cap, what? And the answer was equally simple. We are going to chase respect. We want to be the most respected company in the world one day, period. And we told ourselves that the top line and bottom line can be impacted by far too many things. But how the other person in front of you looks at you, what the other person thinks of you, is something that is within your control. You want to earn the respect of your clients. It will make sure that you deliver on every promise you make, that you create value for your clients at every step, that you understand your client's business better than the client, that you grow your competencies to meet the client's requirement. Only then is a client going to respect you. You want to earn the respect of your employees. It will make sure that you create an open meritocracy. It will make sure that you share your wealth. Only then are the employees going to respect you. You want to earn the respect of your investors. It will make sure that you provide consistent financial performance, that you're absolutely transparent in all your financial dealings. Only then are the investors going to respect you. And the same thing for the society. You want to earn respect of the society, you better give back more to the society than you take from it. Only then will the society respect you. And it is something that is completely in your own hands. Who you are, how you behave, what you stand for, that's up to you. And to create an organization like that, it's important that it is built on a foundation of non-negotiable, unflinching value system. And this slide articulates the value system of Infosys. You know, there are three things that every company claims. One is we are a values-based organization. The second is our people are our biggest assets. And the third is we are an innovation-driven company. You know, we also say these things, but especially when it comes to values, we believe that values are values only when you are willing to get hurt while standing up for them. If you're not willing to get hurt, then those are not values, those are words. And for an organization where it hurts most, as we all know, is in the balance sheet, in the financial statement. That's where it's ouch. According to the Forbes magazine, we are the most financially transparent company in the world. According to Fortune magazine, we are the only company in the world that publishes its financial statements in accordance with the GAAP of 8 different countries. We are willing to get hurt. Now, why is this important? Because we believe that if we want to be truly global, we have to work at what is common across the world. And we believe every parent across the world, irrespective of culture, irrespective of geography, tells their children, don't lie, don't cheat, work hard, study, save for the future. Don't be flaunting your wealth. These are universally held middle class, and I'm using the term middle class within quotes, values. Just about every parent in the world imbibes these values to their children. And we run our organization on those very same principles. We believe if we do that, we are not going to be dissonant. The company culture is not going to be dissonant across geographies. And it's extremely important to be able, you know, some of our best friends are people whom we have never seen within the organization. You only talk to them. You don't see them. How do you work with them? In a typical project, you will find 3 different geographies, 3 different cultures associated. How do you work? You have to build relationships based on what is common between you, not on what is different. We all talk the same language of technology. We have a lot of shared interests in, music, movies. After that, the differences become an object of curiosity, not of hostility. Yet another saying, in God we trust, everyone else please come with data. No data, no conversation. We believe that if you can't measure something, there is no way you can manage it, there's no way you can improve it, and I'm sure everyone in this room agrees with that. And this is something that we learned the hard way just around the time when we were born. Because when we went to the West and said, guess what, we can do this for you and we can do this cheaper, we would be laughed at. Because cheaper is invariably linked to being inferior. We realized that we had no choice but to create the best quality in the world. Second best, or one amongst the best, is not going to cut guys. In 1991, or maybe 1992, there was a very interesting paper that was published that was titled, why does software collapse but bridges don't? Think about it. Why does software collapse but bridges don't? It's not that smarter people are building bridges. Equally smart guys are building software. So they came up, they dug into it and they came up with the top 10 reasons. And the number 1 reason was, you don't go around changing the design of the bridge till the last day. So that's another thing common between our industries. You go around changing the design till the last day. But at that time, there were only 29% of projects being finished on time, on budget, on spec in the US. You would say, hey, that was 1991, things would have changed. Of course things have changed. It has improved from 29%, it has gone up to 34%. The number for Infosys on an aggregate level has never fallen below 90%. That's the level of redefinition that we had to do. So we are building bridges. It's not an art, it is not a science, it is engineering. And it has to be therefore data driven. And it has to be a culture within the organization, because data is the same across geographies, across cultures. 2 plus 2 is the same everywhere. That language is the language that holds. It is not English. It's the language of data that holds, that's the second force that holds this globally distributed organization. The first, of course, being the universal values. We measure just about everything in HR, in marketing, in finance, in legal. We measure everything. We understand the problems of data overload. And therefore we take the balanced scorecard approach. And then we link our salaries to that data. Only half my salary is guaranteed. The other half is linked to my scorecard. And I am evaluated on my scorecard. And my scorecard is part of the, it comes from the corporate scorecard and it goes down to my team. But the money is linked to the scorecard. So we put our money where our data is. We believe community good should triumph over individual good. And we don't mean over individual rights. We do not mean that it should triumph over individuality, no. How's your experience been with Indian traffic? Have you seen Indian traffic in big cities? You know, just like nature abhors a vacuum, Indian roads abhor an empty space. Even if there is 3 cubic feet of space, a cow or a truck will come and take over. Even if it's on the other side of the road. Everyone tries to get their 10 yards. Maximize their individual good. As a result, there's a gridlock, traffic comes to a standstill, community good comes down. We believe that it is important for every member of Infosys to be a model citizen irrespective of the location. Whether they are in Belgium, whether they are in Bangalore, it really doesn't matter. They have to be role models in the society. We believe that our responsibility does not end at paying 33% tax. We must give back to the society. We have a foundation, we give up to 1% of our money, of our profits to the foundation. And at the same time, we have a loose network within the organization that gives time, money, effort to work with the weaker sections of the society. It's so important that when we have our annual Excellence Awards, where we reward the best work done across the organization, there's a category for working with the society. We give back. And finally, we tell ourselves every day that we have to be humble. We have to respect our competition. And we have to be absolutely paranoid. We say healthy sense, but no, we expect people to be really paranoid. Because success today is absolutely no guarantee of success tomorrow. We have seen far too many companies blaze like meteors and then burn out like meteors. We don't intend to be that company. We know we are an extremely lucky company. When the tide rises, all the boats rise with the tide. We have risen with the tide. The real challenge for Infosys is, how do we create an organization that lasts for 200 years? How do we create an organization that can succeed when the times are tough? How do we create an organization that can deal with unpredictable events? They have not really been tested till now. For that, we have to realize that yesterday is over. We have to look at the future. We believe in the future, to be a long-lasting organization, we have to embrace globalization completely. Tomorrow, if Mongolia produces the best talent in the world, you have to have the best Mongolians dying to join Infosys. You have to build an organization that is glued together by an unflinching value system across cultures, across geographies. And you have to speak the language of data. That's understood by everyone in the world. Thank you. I want as many questions as you can ask me. Thank you. At 5 cents a minute. Now the only thing that's saving the Sprints and the cellular and the singulars and all those global networks are the regulations that stop Indian companies from going out and competing. On the other hand, companies like Vodafone, for example, have come into India because they realize that, emerging economies, this is where the handsets are being sold. This is where Vodafone needs to be. And that's very interesting. Tomorrow, Vodafone's early move into India, or Orange's early move into India, has given it a base for restructuring its cost base. So that which the US cellular companies have not done. And therefore, we believe that the European companies have an edge.
What are the biggest business fields of Infosys and in which countries? Or what's their business model behind the biggest fields?
Martin Krasny, Boston.
In terms of countries, 63% of our revenues come from North America, 27% from Europe, and 10% from rest of the world. We are present in banking and financial services industry. That's big. 33% of our revenues come from banking and financial services.
It's software.
Yeah, we do from consulting to maintenance, and the software is included in between. So for companies like Bank of America, American Express, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, all of them, from the consulting part to building the software to maintaining the software, we do all those services. So we work at the infrastructure level, we work at the application level, we work at the process level, and we work at the strategy level.
And which of this makes the most revenue?
So 33% is banking and financial services industry. Retail is about 14%. Manufacturing is about 20%. Communication service providers, media and entertainment is around 12%. Energy utilities is about 8%. Then, so you have banking, insurance, retail, manufacturing, energy, utilities, and the rest will be another 10%. That's the breakup.
Yes, one of your you are very competitive because the salaries in India are not very high. No, that's one of the reasons I think. Or it's not true. That this is one. So I want to ask what about in the future when salaries will going more up and up in India? What will be about the competitive you are in front of Europe or USA?
Sure. Two parts to this question, and this is a very important question. Three parts. Number one, there are two ways of looking at salaries, of looking at money across the world when you compare. One is you look in absolute terms. In absolute terms, when a person joins, a fresh engineering graduate, joins Infosys, their salary is $7,000 a year. In America, the similar number will be in the $45,000 a year. And that is the basis on which it is usually compared. However, this is misleading. Because economists have figured out a long time ago that there is something called purchasing power parity, PPP, which means $1 in America, what does it buy, versus $1 in India, what does it buy, versus $1 in UK, what does it buy. And when you calibrate on purchasing power parity, then the conversion from $1 to rupee is not 50, but it is 10. So the entry-level salary is $7,000 in absolute terms in dollars, but in terms of purchasing power parity, it is $35,000. Now that changes the equation. And what it means is that the quality of life that you can afford for the same amount of money is very different in India versus in the US. So that's one part. The second part is what impact does a rise in salary have? Because in the US or in Europe, salaries rise by how much? 3%? 4%? 5%? In India, they gallop by 15%, 20%, 25%, 35% for the good performance. So what do? For that, you have to do a little bit of math. 50% of our cost is in salaries. Single largest cost, right? 40% or 50%, let's take round numbers. 50% of that is in India. So 25% of our cost is in India, which will escalate. Take an average of 15% escalation. So 15% of 25% is what? 3.75%. That is the increase in our payroll, real in cost. We have to neutralize 3.75%. Out of that, 2% gets neutralized by increasing productivity. And the rest has to be neutralized by selling higher value services. Surprise, our profits increase every year. They don't go down. Our profits actually increase, or they remain steady. So salaries do increase, but it is not as simple as it looks at first glance. It is possible to neutralize that. I think there's a question there. Yes, ma'am.
You talk about your 1 in 100 ratio from a recruitment perspective. How do you identify which that 1 in 100 is?
Sure. It's a huge process, but in short, we look for two things. Powered by intellect, driven by values. That's what we look for. So we test for those two things. So there's a series of tests. You have to have cutoffs at every level, cutoffs for the marks in your 10th grade and your 12th grade. And some people get very upset with us because we go back all the way to 10th grade marks. Then they have to give tests, then they have to go through the interviews. So it's a pretty long, drawn-out process. But it's, again, heavily processized because pure manual intervention cannot sort through 1.5 million. So we have written technology pieces that picks up the stuff from the resume, parses through the key stuff, then throws off only the top 10% out of that, out of which then we call another, 50% of that, and then we finally choose after the interviews.
And what's your retention rate?
12.7% as of last quarter. This is about 3% point higher than where our comfort zone is. We want it around 10%. But it's about 12.7, 13. The peak attrition rate was about 14%. It's half the industry attrition rate. It's as I said, it's about 3% point above where we want it to be. One more question.
You talked about technology not training.
Opportunities for us. Now, for example, in India, the Airtel, there's a company called Airtel, which is a cellular service provider, India's largest mobile service provider. And they have launched Direct TV. That's powered by us. We have done the technology piece behind that. So increasingly, ICICI Bank, for example, right? It's one of India's second largest bank. And it has the highest, it's the largest in terms of virtual banking, net-based and ATM-based. That runs on our platform. We have written it's our product, Pinnacle, and we have done the entire technology piece behind ICICI. So next time you have a problem, you can blame us, right? So it creates huge opportunities in those spaces. Interestingly, a lot of Infosys people, when they leave Infosys, they start their own company. And most of them are working in the mobile space. They're creating technology in the mobile space. Just recently, they have launched a company called LAT-LON, short for latitude and longitude. So it is, any place you want to go to, anywhere, you just give that and send an SMS, and they will send you all the directions from wherever you are to that place. So it's a huge opportunity. Mobile and other technology platforms, huge opportunity. We work in the area of agriculture. We work in the area of cattle. We work in the area of You know, Johnson & Johnson has got these stents that are used in heart surgeries. And they don't sell it by single stent. So a box of 100 stents are sold to a hospital. Now these stents, for example, are used only when someone is under operation. So the nurse goes, takes off the stent, takes it into the operation room. Johnson & Johnson is clueless about how many of them are used because the hospitals pay them on use. They take that box of 100, but if they use only 5, they pay for only 5. So Johnson & Johnson has no predictability, no visibility into how much is its revenue going to be from that. They had a huge problem, so they came to us. So what we did was, we created a box that had an RFID chip in it, and that, so every time you take a stent out, the counter clicks, tells a mobile, the mobile sends an SMS automatically to the guy in Johnson & Johnson, and now no one has to bother. It's all recorded. So there are huge opportunities for solutions, interesting, elegant, beautiful solutions to complex problems. Yes, sir.
You're coming from our business. You've been somewhere else. So on.
One last remark. There's a similarity between your company and our network. We use the best brains all over the world. And the top of the best brains are sitting here. We thank you very, very much.